I wanted to start with a broad question. How do you describe what's going on between the United States and Iran at this moment?
Well, Iran is dealing with people who are not very sane. So we have to manage. That's as far as I can go. There's nothing else to say.
We've been hearing from the administration, and the mainstream media has been reiterating or repeating that line that a deal with Iran is imminent. Iranian media, Iranian officials have been very suspicious of it. My own sense is that Trump administration has been doing it to at least placate the market, keep the future prices of oil lower than the actual delivery price of the physical oil, and also not perhaps, but to contain the domestic sentiment given this war is so unpopular in the United States. What is your sense of what you've been hearing about an imminent deal?
You're correct. Based on what Trump has been saying in his most recent Truth Social posts, we do not yet have a deal. Iran's conditions are clear. They're not going to change. Trump will have to accept those conditions. Otherwise, there won't be a deal. And it doesn't really bother the Iranians if Trump manipulates the markets. The more he pours U.S. strategic reserves, oil from U.S. strategic reserves on to the market and talks down the market price, that's actually helpful to Iran because Iran wants to prevent demand destruction. Iran wants consumption to remain high so that U.S. and Western strategic reserves finish sooner rather than later. And that is going to ultimately put them in a very, very difficult situation. Managing or manipulating the market like this is doable, is manageable up to a point. But once those reserves begin to finish and people recognize that this crisis is much bigger than they were told, things will spiral out of control. And we're getting there. From what experts are saying, the month of June will be very decisive for the oil market. And oil is a part of the problem. It's also LNG, it's helium, it's fertilizers, it's everything. It's all sorts of things that are produced at countries, at petrochemical plants in the Persian Gulf. And of course, there are other things that are produced in the region that are energy intensive, which are also missing from the market. This is a catastrophe for the United States, but Trump can hide it for a while, and he's making it far worse for the reasons I explained. Because since there is very little demand destruction, there's a lot of complacency, and consumption is high. Governments are not preparing themselves. People are not preparing themselves, and this is going to put Trump in a very, very bad situation.
And why do you think Trump is unable to roll back or get off ramp? Is it still the clout of the Israel lobby, or is it a genuine disagreement about what to do with the stock of 490 kg of 60% enriched uranium, or the future of the Strait of Hormuz? Or is he actually trying to find a way to get off ramp with a victory of narrative of victory? Why is he unable to get off ramp?
I think his biggest problem by far is the Zionist lobby. The Zionist lobby, the Israeli regime, they've destroyed the global economy. And it is getting worse by the hour. And when Trump, recognizing what a bad situation he and Netanyahu have created, something which I mean, we shouldn't have had war in the first place. It's an illegal and criminal war that they carried out. But after 39 days where they were defeated, Netanyahu and Trump, there could have been a ceasefire where oil and other goods could have flowed through the Strait of Hormuz. But then we all recall that Netanyahu wrecked the ceasefire deal by carpet bombing Lebanon. And that prevented Iran from allowing those extra ships to pass through. Remember, the Strait of Hormuz was never closed. It was only closed to countries that were complicit in the war against Iran for good reason. So Kuwait, Saudi Arabia, Bahrain, the Emirates, and Qatar, who helped slaughter all those 3,500, I think, or so Iranians, their ships were blocked. But Chinese ships, Russian ships, Indian ships, Pakistani ships, Bangladeshi ships, Japanese ships, and others, they have been passing through the strait. Every day, roughly 25, 20, 30 ships are going through the strait at the moment. But we were going to have a ceasefire where many more ships would pass through, and it would become and the global economy would have been able to be saved from this huge crisis if only Netanyahu had not carpet bombed Beirut, slaughtering hundreds of people to ruin the ceasefire agreement. So what is happening now? Trump has recognized that things are getting much worse. It's been over 3 months now, and the crisis is growing, and it's having a snowball effect. And ultimately, this is going to blow up in his face. So he wants a deal, and we almost had a deal. The two sides were very close, and then, as expected, the Zionist lobby, the Israeli regime, they were outraged, they were angry, and they started pushing back. And Trump, being the really weak and cowardly president that he is, he backed down immediately. So we were close to a deal, and now it seems from his rhetoric that we've been hearing over the past few days and today as well, that we are further away from a deal. But Iran's position will not change. So all he's doing is he's going to make the global economy move towards a much more dangerous situation.
How long do you think you'd be forced by the Zionist lobby? I'm asking this given the objective conditions that he is facing are so dire. The direct economic impact on the U.S. economy, including inflation and effectively interest rates and therefore growth, the future of the petrodollar system, given all the expenses that the Gulf economies are incurring in military, effectively leaving much fewer investment that was plugged into the transatlantic dollar system that solidified the petrodollar system, given the strain on the military industrial complex, critical resources having to be diverted from South Korea and Taiwan into West Asia. One can go on and on about what he is facing. And these are the objective conditions that tell us that he is desperate to get off ramp. But then there is the Zionist lobby. So I'm just thinking about forces of history. How long do you think the Zionist lobby will be able to hold on and keep forcing him into this war?
I think a key objective of Iran is to try to put enough pressure on the United States to make it have to prioritize the United States over the Israeli regime. So until now, the United States sacrificed its own people for the Israeli regime. That has always been the case. And this has become much more evident since 9/11. 9/11, of course, most probably, I mean, from the evidence we now see, was the Mossad was probably involved. And they use Al Qaeda, which is a tool of the West, to carry out this attack. And then we saw Wesley Clark tell how a general told him of a plan to take out 7 countries in 5 years. And 6 of those countries have been effectively overthrown, and we've reached the last country, Iran. The only problem is that that 5-year plan took a good almost 25 years instead. And thanks to Iran, the United States has paid a heavy price on the way, the empire, because the Iranians helped the resistance in Iraq. It helped the resistance in Afghanistan. It helped the resistance, of course, in Yemen. It helped the resistance in Syria, although the U.S. proxies, Al Qaeda and ISIS forces did come to power, but they've been severely weakened. This brutal and barbaric Takfiri force of the West, it's been badly weakened. But in any case, the United States has spent tens of trillions of dollars on these forever wars. But the biggest defeat by far, as Robert Kagan has pointed out in his article in The Atlantic, Kagan being the godfather of the neocons, and the husband of a major neocon, he said this is the greatest defeat in American history, in contemporary American history, 21st, 20th century. So the United States today has to make a decision. Since 9/11, the United States has been pursuing an Israeli project in our region, and the price has been much higher than expected. And for the reasons that I said, thanks to General Soleimani and Ayatollah Khamenei, it helped the resistance against the occupation. And so the United States became weaker and weaker, but it was always a prioritization of the Israeli regime. This was all about Israel. All of what happened. There are many objectives in Iraq and Afghanistan and the minerals, the oil. But at the end of the day, these policies were pursued because of the Israeli regime. That was their priority. And so it was America's priority. And the attack on Iran, the war against Iran, same objective. And now the United States has spent tens of trillions of dollars. And in this war, it's going to get much worse than in previous wars. And the economic crisis emerging in the United States, which is this crisis that is building up for multiple reasons. The never-ending wars that I explained, but also the neoliberal policies and that have been pursued, especially after the collapse of the Soviet Union. That has brought a situation where today the United States is on the brink of something very dark. It's already in a very bad situation, but it's on the brink of something very dark. And the United States has to make a decision. Does it want to go into that darkness, or does it want to find a solution? If it prioritizes the Israeli regime, then it will go into darkness. If it makes a decision to prioritize itself for once, then I still think it's going to get very bad. But at least they'll be able to soften the blow.
If let's just assume if the U.S. could prioritize itself, and I'm talking about the empire itself prioritizing itself. I'm not saying the U.S. prioritizing itself with great excitement. Would that mean that the issue would effectively come down to the Strait of Hormuz and the enriched uranium, or would it also include all the other set of issues that seem to me at the moment has taken backseat? I mean, they are still talking about Iranian allies in the region, or but things like regime change, things like ending civilization. I mean, everyone now knows these were jokes or just hot air. They have failed miserably in all these regards. I mean, they ought to fail. What would that mean if for once the U.S. could prioritize itself?
It would mean that it would sign the deal that has been discussed over the past few weeks. The Iranians are going to maintain control of the Strait of Hormuz. That's not going to change, come what may. The Iranians are not going to give up their sovereignty or their peaceful nuclear program. The Iranians are going to demand their assets that were stolen by the United States, and upfront, half of those stolen assets are going to have to be handed over. Iran will demand that the siege on ports by the Trump regime come to an end. And Iran will demand that the war in Lebanon, the Zionist war against the Lebanese people, come to an end. These are conditions that are not going to change. And we almost had an agreement, and Trump, simply by walking away and ranting and raving and carrying out a couple of airstrikes or murdering a few soldiers and for no justification, he's not going to change that at all. So if he walks away, we'll just sit here. We'll wait until he decides to come back. But while we're waiting, we're going to be looking at the U.S. strategic reserves, the European reserves. We're going to be looking at how the American economy is going to deal with the situation during the month of June. And the expectation is that ultimately Trump will have to come back to the negotiating table.
I wanted you.
If not, then the global economy will collapse. We don't want this, but he and Netanyahu and the Zionists, they are imposing this on the world.
It would be helpful if you could tell us a little bit about how important is Hezbollah for Iran and ultimately the cause of Palestine, given the mainstream media has tried to suppress Iranian insistence about US and Israel ending its war in Lebanon, while Iran has been very, very clear about that being an important condition about any kind of deal moving forward. The mainstream media has been making it as if it is all about the Strait of Hormuz and the enriched uranium, but Iran has been very, very insistent about ending the war in Lebanon, which has a very, very important element to the occupation in Palestine. And you and I know about its acceleration of the genocide, let's say, which was paused to the degree it was, but there has been tremendous atrocities recently. In fact, many Palestinian analysts say that one of the reasons why Israel wants to stick to the war with Iran is to deflect global attention from Palestine so that it can continue its occupation in both West Bank and Gaza, which they have not left since the so-called ceasefire.
Well, for the Iranians, the key issue of our time is the Palestinian issue. I mean, for Iran, Cuba is very important, but Palestine is the biggest issue. But Iran supports Cuba. It's been supporting the Venezuelan people who've been taken hostage, and other countries and movements that have been under assault by the empire. But the Palestinian issue has been a key foreign policy issue for Iran. And that is why Iran is assaulted. That is why the Hezbollah is assaulted. That is why Iran is so antagonized in the West. It's all about Palestine. You know, whether they say that Iran is a threat to the world because of nuclear programs, or Iran is evil and it violates human rights, or whether it is terrorism and that Iran is a terrorist regime. All of this is about one thing, and that is Palestine. The West supports ethno-supremacism, ethnic cleansing, and genocide, and Iran opposes it. So Iran is evil. It's quite simple. It's very simple. This is exactly what it's been all about all this time. And it's becoming clearer for people across the world. People in the past, I think, many people across the world believe the Western narrative because there was no other narrative out there, no rival narrative. Iran never had much of a voice. That's why I said on your show and on other shows that people should read Going to Tehran by Flint and Hilary Leverett, or Alistair Crook's book, Resistance, or Peter Oborn's book, A Dangerous Delusion, because there's very little out there to read. If you really want to understand Iran, most of the other books, most of the media outlets, all of them give you a warped understanding and an understanding that is often 180 degrees different from reality. But people after the genocide in Gaza, when across the world, they gradually saw that it was Iran that was supporting the Palestinians, and everyone else was either indifferent or supporting or complicit or supporting the genocide. And gradually people woke up. And then the 12-day war happened, and then the recent war happened, and people saw the deceit of the United States. And it's not just Trump. We saw how the mainstream media, even those that oppose Trump, they were supporting the destruction of Iran. They were condemning Iran during the war, the victim. So people have woken up to this reality that exists. For Iran, the Palestinian issue is a humanitarian issue. It is an issue that we can't close our eyes to. Just like we cannot close our eyes to the Cuban issue. Cubans are not, the Cuban government is a communist government. But we support the Cuban government, the Cuban people, because they're victims. So in addition to that, we see that the Israeli regime is carrying out genocide now in Lebanon, a second genocide. And the West, of course,